We live in a world filled with superheroes. Our family members, those serving in the military, sports players, doctors, nurses, movie stars, the list goes on. Some heroes we choose, and some who choose us. I like to think that Superman chose me. I'm Luke, the Geek of Steel, and this is a brief history of Action Comics. I'm a Superman superfan, one of many. There are thousands of us scattered around this planet we call home, and I have had the pleasure of interacting with many of them for over 10 years through the magic of the internet and social media. In that time, I have shared my collection of toys and comics, and given my thoughts on movies, old and new. Throughout this time, I have always been collecting and finding out new trivia about my hero. There is a lot to know about the Man of Tomorrow, and I know I have a lot more to find out. My passion for Superman began in the early 2000s. I came across a television show by chance one Sunday morning and it caught my eye. The story I was seeing seemed familiar, and I'd heard these characters' names before. It didn't take me long to discover that I was watching a young Superman getting to grips with being a teenager while also trying to hide and control his newly found powers. Of course, I was watching Smallville. This television show is what got me into Superman, and from that, I got into the comics, the stories, the characters, and the adventures. But Smallville is a different story altogether. I could rant and rave about the hundreds of episodes, but we are here to talk about Action Comics. And if we didn't have Action Comics, we wouldn't have Smallville, or Arrow, Gotham, X-Men, Guardians of the Galaxy, or many other heroic movies and television shows. To me, Action Comics was the beginning of the hero franchise. We owe a lot to that small pamphlet that only cost 10 cents back in 1938. We also owe a lot to the two heroes who created it, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. For many years, the two tried to find a way to get their character out there. Superman at first was a bald and villainous madman. Remind you of anyone? He was telepathic and not very heroic at all. Siegel had the thought, what if this Superman was a force for good instead of evil? And then, our hero started to take shape. The fathers of Superman, Siegel writing and Shuster providing the art, brought the first Superman comic to life way back in 1938. And he wasn't the hero we know and love today. His skill set was slightly different. Superman couldn't fly just yet, but he could jump. 1/8 of a mile to be precise. In the first issue, Superman showed off his talents and also showed the reader what he stood for. Champion of the oppressed, the physical marvel who had sworn to devote his existence to helping those in need. In the first story, our hero saves an innocent woman from being executed, deals with an abusive husband, and a whole gang of hoodlums. All this in only 14 pages. And no Superman story would be complete without Lois Lane appearing to give Clark some trouble. If I was a child in 1938 and reading this colourful story for the first time, I would be amazed at the pace and the action the short story gave me, and I would be excited for the next issue. The comic hadn't even mentioned Lex Luthor yet. He wouldn't show his villainous face until 1940. The reader was simply told a new storyline and given a brief introduction to a new hero. A hero which would change the world of comics forever.